Hey everybody, welcome to the Jumpseat. For those who haven't joined the Jumpseat before, it's a weekly spotlight bringing you key industry thought leaders, subject matter experts, and next-gen insights affecting you and your fire department. Hosted by two Jumpseat firemen, myself, John Martins, and Dave Durstein. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm great, John. How are you?
I am doing great myself. It's another Friday here.
It is another Friday. It's great to see you again, and I think
Definitely.
we got a great lineup here for today as well. So I'm looking forward to
You
it.
bet. Awesome.
So hey, you know what? We had Tim on last week from IFSI, right?
We did. Yep.
And
Tim Walsh.
I think he was a great guy to have on. We talked about quick water. Um, You know, I think I've seen on your Facebook post and maybe even heard a little bit about you putting that application to work this past week. Is that right?
That is correct. And I'm glad we had Tim, as you said, on Friday because Sunday, about 10 o'clock, we got sent out for a structure fire. And by the time I left my house, I saw it was burning good. And I knew we were going to be using a lot of water and had to make a pretty tough call. Our last hydrant was about 1,400 feet from the structure. So it was one of those, do we lay in what we got and then proceed in, add a couple minutes before we have water on fire, or do we go straight to the scene? So knowing we had 1,000, we approached in, knew the second unit wasn't too far behind, and we definitely utilized the quick water methodology and got to, I will say this, the structure was already self-venting out the front doors and windows and soffit, but we were able to hit a quick punch for about a minute and a half with our tank water to reduce the front exposure as well as reduce a little bit of damage on the front side. So got to see the effects of that and was pretty unique to have a chance to do that right after we had Tim talking about how Chicago utilizes quick water. So it was a pretty good little application, I should say. So always got to be ready, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, that's kind of the goal of the show here is just to bring thought provoke, even in some instances, and bring ideas and concepts to play. And so uh, it's, interesting how we get to apply it all of a sudden whenever things happen just like that. So I'm
Right.
glad you and your crew were all safe. And
Yeah,
obviously, hey, thanks to Tim if you're watching today,
that's
and
right.
to any other Chicago guys that were helping us share the quick water stuff last week. Great
Definitely.
things, and glad you could make a difference with it there, John.
Yeah, Dave, real quick as well. I wanted to, you actually found this and sent it over, but go ahead and touch on the near miss that we saw. I'm going to share my screen and show a picture of it as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. So I mean, things happen on incidents all the time, and there was one that actually hit the social media world this week here. I believe, gosh, it was on the 5th, I think, is when it actually popped up there, and so I think you're sharing it here, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely, right. So this is some images from a fire that occurred in Evansville, Indiana, and jump back really quick, John, if you can go back one image there. And so this is what the first arriving crew saw of a structure. And actually, you can look it up. There's been a lot of comments on it throughout. It was had a building that had been added on several times. Actually, had bowstring construction in a portion of this, and so this was what they saw as they came on scene. And I give credit to the officers in charge here because they actually did the right thing. They made a call. We're going to go defensive right from the get go. And as we jump to the next one here, you can kind of see the impacts of what was actually occurring. These were great action shots as that wall is actually now collapsing. And you see the line laying there. I don't know the story if somebody actually had seen something, observed something, called a crew off of it, or if it was just luck in some cases, which is a good thing. But go
Mhm.
ahead and grab the next one. I think there's a great, yeah, you see that the
Yep.
wall continues to come down, and we end up with a pretty heavy collapse right there. So
Wow.
from my understanding, everybody was okay. No firefighters injured, which is what we always want to have happen. But it's back to that situational awareness. We've had discussions about that on the show before,
Hmm.
and so my hat's off,
Wow.
my helmet off, right to those in charge. And obviously a scary situation there for a few minutes, but I'm glad everybody was safe in Evansville, Indiana. Obviously, an
Yeah.
interesting and exciting situation that you don't always want to be faced with on the fire ground. So, John, it may just be me, but I seem like you froze
There
up
we
there
go.
for a second. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Looks like we're
here.
back. I don't know. Something happened there internet wise. Obviously, we try to avoid that when we can at all costs, but we have our challenges from time to time. So,
Yep. Right on, Dave. Well, thanks for pointing that out. That was a good find for you on that, and I'm glad our viewers could check that out. Let's switch gears here. Let's move to our feature. Who we got coming in today, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, part of us being in this IDEX fire and safety team, we have this incredible reach of awesome talent and coworkers and colleagues. And so we try to branch out and get as many experts from outside of our organization as we can. But this is one that is really kind of hard to ignore. And so, if you guys have been following us for the last 16 weeks, we've done a lot of things around firefighting, fire response. And it's something that is passionate to me. I love the fire side of things. I think John's the same way, but we have a tendency to forget that, 70 to 80% of our calls, the trucks don't leave. It's the squad, it's the ambulance, it's the medic unit, it's the Band-Aid buggy, if you want to call it that, right? That actually goes out on the majority of the runs. In many cases, may even be the moneymaker for your firehouse or fire department. And so we tried to switch gears today and kind of bring in an ambulance expert. And we have an incredible resource on our team. And so I'm actually glad to bring on Steve Rowland, who's our guest today in the Jumpseat. And Steve, he began his career as a fire and EMS guy back in 1986. So he's seen a thing in his career in Bradenton, Florida. So he's coming to us from the Sunshine State down south. Steve, welcome to the Jumpseat. How are you?
Excellent. I don't know if I'm in the Jumpseat, more like the patient compartment, but we'll make it work.
There you go. So we're in the patient compartment today. That's a little change on the play there. So
excellent.
Glad to have you. I don't want to go into the whole bio, me telling them about you. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background? I know I neglected to say you're the sales manager for ambulances and specialty vehicles within IDEX Fire and Safety, but maybe a little bit of snapshot about your professional background and experience in the fire and EMS world.
Sure. Well, like you said, back in the mid 80s, I started in fire EMS. I was a volunteer paid on-call firefighter with a local department here and worked for our county EMS system. We're a third-party system in the county where I live. And after some time there, there were several factors that were involved, not to mention that the pay was about $14,000 a year at the time. So I sought other opportunities, and I left the industry for about 12 years and worked in engineered flow measurement and control manufacturer's representative and did that. But I always had a empty spot that I wanted to get back into public safety somehow. So through a chain of events, I ended up working for several major fire and rescue manufacturers, from Federal Signal to Furno, Washington. Spent a time at Akron Brass and Weldon before, and I'm glad to be back again, but with Demir's ambulances and Pierce MedTech ambulances in between. So I kind of have seen it both from the manufacturer side and from the OEM equipment supplier side. And that from coupled with being in the field maybe gives me a little bit of edge that I can help provide some solutions to the folks that come to us with questions.
Awesome. And I'm going to throw out here, John, I'm going to change the game just a little bit today. And so we've got this incredible resource in Steve here. For those of you who may be watching, if you want to comment in the comments field, and actually through some of the new stuff we've got utilizing here, we may be able to answer some of those questions as they come up. I don't want to put Steve completely on the spot, but if he feels comfortable handling a few of them, we may in fact grab them. So you guys comment, we can actually see those comments as you make them, and we'll try to grab them where we possibly can. So with that being said, tell us a little bit more about what's happening in the world of EMS. I know it's an ever-changing world, just like the firehouse and the fire apparatus side of things. So what are some of those big trends? What are you seeing or hearing in the EMS world there?
Sure. I'll throw up kind of some homework that I did ahead of time. So first of all, we're in the electronics age, obviously, from the mega computers we carry in our pockets that weren't even around 15 years ago. That's brought us to an age where a lot of things are done electronically in real time over the air. And certainly the vehicle chassis manufacturers that our ambulances and even some commercial fire trucks are built on have evolved to that spot too, where you can't just do things with a fuse and a relay anymore. You have to talk to the systems electronically. So that's some things one thing that is coming of age. Keeping the vehicles on the road, there's a growing sense, I think, that maintaining a huge backlot of second line vehicles is not necessarily the most prudent thing to do with our taxpayers' money. That if we can keep our frontline vehicles on the road and keep them performing with as much uptime as possible, not only does it give the opportunity to provide care to the citizenry that's out there, but it also helps lower that impact of maintaining a second fleet. And as you were saying, with the EMS side of a firehouse sometimes being the only revenue generator that's there, the more you can keep vehicles responding to paying patients, as it were, that certainly helps things as well. We've noticed in the past several years, I don't know if it has to do with growing older or what the case is, but it just seems like it's hotter than it's ever been. And so a growing trend that I've seen in the ambulance world are manufacturers really starting to pay attention to the heating and air conditioning systems that they're putting into ambulances, from advanced insulation technologies to larger condensers and compressors that help keep those vehicles cool, especially once you get a little south of the Mason-Dixon line. It's not uncommon to start seeing temperatures in the 80s, in February, March, and not going away until maybe October. So that really helps keep our patients comfortable as well. Saving fuel is something that we're seeing more and more of with the cost of fuel operating vehicles from systems that either provide a battery bank or some sort of alternative power source to power the vehicle while the motor's off. And some systems are out there that do automatic idle reduction, so they'll sense if the temperature in the back of the unit is comfortable, and if the voltage is there to supply all the needs electrically, then it will automatically turn the engine off. And if any of those conditions get out of sync, it'll recrank the engine, kind of automatically jump start it and start it running again. Maybe that's a little better for standbys than on actual calls, but those systems are out there, and our viewers need to know about that. And finally, speaking to each other. It's communication is the key to success in everything, but there is some emerging technology that's pretty cool that allow vehicles to communicate to each other. So you can imagine a device that would go in your fire truck or ambulance that would kind of announce seamlessly over the air into the radio system of the cars that are around it that, hey, look, be on the lookout. An ambulance is in your area, might be coming through this intersection you're coming up to. Those things I think we're really going to see start to take off even more in the future. So that kind of hits the high points.
That's great information. One of the things too that I guess it's more of a question for me on this note. So when you were talking about idle technologies and some of the, I'll say, emissions type topics, do you think that's more driven by regulations, or is that more driven by us being self-responsible, or is it a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both, but we are an industry that's slow to change. Regulations help us do that probably a little more quicker than not. And so in some areas in the West Coast, California specifically, I know New Jersey has some anti-idling regulations that are out there and require those vehicles, even police cars on a scene, to turn their engines off. School buses, public safe transit buses. So that is out there. Plus it comes to the fiscally financial part of things. So if you're paying $3 a gallon for diesel, and if you can keep that engine running 75% of the time instead of 100% of the time, then you just saved a pretty good chunk in your fuel budgets. So it's a little combination of both, and it helps the environment as well. It gives the public the ability to look at their fire and EMS providers and say, you guys are stepping up and doing the right thing for the environment.
Well, and if you look at that in the EMS side of things, and how much time is probably spent with an ambulance sitting in that idle mode. I know we talk about it in the fire truck side, but man, when you think about EMS runs, I mean, our squad at my department, that runs all the time. It is what's turning all the time. And so you think about, okay, we make the call, we're running code 3 to the call, and then the whole time we're taking care of initial patient care and inside the residence or whatever the case may be, it's idling. Right. And then we transport to the hospital, nothing too big there. But then we get to the hospital, it's sitting outside. It's hot today. We want to keep the AC going. So it's idling. And before you know it, you get a whole day, and you probably actually were in the process of driving or running with the engine in a necessary drive type mode. I bet maybe 25%, might even be less than that. I don't even know if there's stats on that.
Oh yeah. No, it's so significant. Even the manufacturers a few years back changed their warranty terms and conditions so that you used to have a 5-year, 60,000 mile warranty, and now it's a 5-year, 60,000 mile or so many engine hours, because the engine hours were equivalating out to over 60,000 miles long before they hit that in actual mileage. And you think of say a soccer tournament, it goes on from 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, and there's an ambulance out there all day long, just sitting there. So in addition to the fuel saving, just the wear and tear on the engine alone, sitting there without air moving across the radiator. So there are good applications for it. I think maybe you wouldn't necessarily use them in a real urban environment where it's 2 minutes to the call, 2 minutes to the hospital, and back to the station. But you've got a lot of these areas that are more rural that can certainly do a good job on.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely
great information. I was going to ask too, the next question that we wanted to kind of hit on here is, in the world of EMS, and tell us a little bit about ambulance standards. Apparently they're somewhat like fire apparatus, and I didn't know that. Tell us a little bit about that, and what are they?
Sure. Let me get another screen back up here for you. There's really 3 that are out there. 2 are standards in the pure definition, and 1 is a specification. So the one in the middle is what is commonly referred to as the K specification. It's the federal purchasing specification for ambulances that the federal government purchases. So they could be for military installations, for Native American reservations, for any number of things that the federal government would buy an ambulance for. So just a real super quick history lesson. I know we're short on time, but back in the 70s when EMS was starting, there needed to be some sort of a funding effort to help those start. So Congress had some legislation that would issue block grants to states and communities to purchase ambulances, but they had to have some sort of standard to go by to ensure they were buying qualified products. So many of the states adopted the K specification as the ambulance specification for their state. So there is no national standard, but that's kind of the de facto if you wanted to look at it that way. So because the federal government wants to purchase their ambulances in the certain way that they want to, some of the states that didn't leave room for interpretation, you could not, for example, change the color of an ambulance. I know states like, and it's not a put down, but like Tennessee, you have to have a white ambulance with an orange stripe because that's what the federal KKK specification says. Whereas in other states, you can have a pink ambulance for breast cancer awareness, or multicolored for neonatal transports, or what have you. So that being said, there was this movement, if you will, several years back for there to be a national standard, or a standard developed in the spirit of the NFPA 1911 fire truck standards. So the 1917 committee was born out of that, and essentially it took the specifications of the K and incorporated that with the testing standards that the NFPA was known for, so that you had not only the design of the ambulance, but how you could prove that design was being made. When they published their standard, the 1917 standard back in 2013, it was overlooked, maybe we'll put it that way, but there's over half of the ambulances that are out there in the country are not operated by fire departments. So there's this kind of pushback from the private ambulance world and from the hospital-based ambulance and the third-party county-based systems that said, why should I follow an NFPA standard if I'm not in the fire service? So the Commission on Accreditation for Ambulance Services, CAS, is kind of the gold standard for certification of EMS systems. So they go in and inspect your protocols and your hiring practices and your drug storage and all that kind of stuff to give you a rating or a certification for ambulance service. And so that group developed the Ground Vehicle Standard, or GVS standard, which is kind of developed under the same thought process of NFPA, that they took the specifications you had to meet and also the tests that you had to do to prove that you met them. So in a kind of a third party standing back evaluation, if you get an ambulance today that is specified to either GVS NFPA or the Triple K standard, you're going to get a quality ambulance. You're not settling for less if you pick one over the other. The NFPA has some fire-related language to it. The GVS has some more non-fire-related language to it. But all in all, you're going to come out with a pretty solid truck.
That's interesting, having those various standards. And so if I'm a fire department and I'm looking to do it, am I going to lean more towards a 1917 standard versus, let's say, the CAS or the Triple K standard?
I think you probably would, just because you're kind of used to that process and those protocols. But there are a lot of fire department EMS divisions that are CAS certified. So they're not necessarily in competition with one another. There's always that little bit of jabbing and winking that goes on back and forth. But really, both organizations are out to have a truck that provides the best vehicle for the consumer and the patients that are out there.
Awesome. So, I'm going to change the game just a little bit here. And so, when you look at these, the EMS world, right, there's some things I imagine I can say in my own department, in my world, that we are doing probably a pretty good job at. But you look at it maybe more holistically. And so, Steve, from your perspective, where are we succeeding? Where are we doing really well in the EMS world today? And, adding value to patient care or response and things of that nature?
Sure. No, I think there's several ways that EMS is shining right now. Right now, the United States delivers what I think are world-class patient care standards. We have developed over time protocols that are done in the field that are oftentimes your first 15 minutes to an hour in an ambulance is going to be the exact same experience you would have if you were in a hospital emergency room, other than if there's invasive surgery that may be needed. The protocols that go with that, I know there are agencies out there. I saw a spot in Texas the other day that is now carrying whole blood on the trucks. So if they need to administer blood for a gunshot victim or some other sort of exsanguinating injury, that they can give them blood right in the field. And we've probably got now, with the incorporation of these standards several years back into our bloodstream, we've got probably some of the most advanced vehicles that are out there, built to the toughest standards to withstand G-forces that are on par with the fire trucks that we've been building for many years. I think some of the challenges that probably we need to start addressing, we are addressing as an industry. First, I would say the need for the industry to be recognized as professionals, and those of us who were in or are in the industry say, I'm a professional firefighter, I'm a professional paramedic, whatever the case may be. But just the other day, I think 2 or 3 days ago, I was watching a news conference, and someone asked President Trump, President Trump, during this COVID pandemic, the ambulance drivers are really having a difficulty getting reimbursements, and the ambulance driver... We haven't been ambulance drivers since the 1800s. We're really out there. And I think that, you look at fire and EMS, and this is going to be preaching to the choir for our audience for sure. But the pay scale that those professions receive in comparison to the job they do for society as a whole is way askew. And until the profession gets recognized to be on the level of an engineer or an attorney or, some other sort of paraprofessional that's out there, things aren't going to change for the better for sure. We'll continue the cycle of attracting a workforce that wants to work for a few years until they get their PA degree or their respiratory therapist degree and move on out of the industry for bigger and brighter futures. And I think coupled with that is the reimbursement problem in general. And anybody who follows EMS is probably familiar with it peripherally, unless you may be a service owner or chief, and then you're much more intimately with it. But when you transport patients who have no other way to the hospital, they may be on indigent care or some other disability. Anybody that qualifies for Medicare or Medicaid, the government only allows you to request reimbursement for those patients up to a certain amount. Now, it's a small percentage of what the services actually cost or what you would bill to a paying customer in that sense. So that's something that I think once. It's hard to expand to new technologies and get the latest and greatest ambulances when you're only making 50 cents on every dollar that you put out. So we didn't get into it for the money, but certainly that would help.
No doubt.
You know, go ahead, John.
I was just agreeing with that. No doubt, that's something that short term it may not show, but long term there's going to be a lot of deficits or just areas of concern that will continue to start as very small things, but can become large scale issues.
No, it's true, and the baby boomer generation is hitting. I mean, the population that requires or is going to require ambulance transport. I actually saw a speaker at the AAA, the American Ambulance Association meeting several years back, and he had an interesting statistic that I'd never really considered before, but that said the average American spends 90% of what they spend on healthcare in the last 10% of their lives. And so that's something, as we all get to that point, and our parents, grandparents get to those points where they're really requiring that population segment is really growing. So there's going to be continuing need for increased funding.
Wow. I want to touch back on one of the things you brought up when we started talking about emerging trends there initially, and so you had mentioned the embracing of technology in the trucks as a whole, right?
Sure.
And I know we kind of talked about it on the side, but the whole paramedicine thing. And so, just crazy thinking here towards the future, where do you see that kind of playing out? Do you see the digital age or even the telematics information transfer from hospitals back to be a growing thing? Do you see that we're going to have more of that telemedicine type care that we can extend and get to reach the docs or others while in the transportation process?
Oh, for sure. I had to, as a courtesy, I muted my phone before I joined up, but I've seen several news flashes come out because we live in an instant information time right now. I mean, if you find out about something a half hour after it happens, you're late. And so with those technologies, as we get to the 5G FirstNet networks that are more incorporated, the higher speeds that are out, the ability to speak with a hospital. We've all watched Johnny and Roy getting on the telephone and talking to Rampart. That's back in the day, showing my age, but I guess my gray hair shows my age, but nonetheless, as we're able to talk on cell phones and radios, but the video side of things, there are some programs that are out there, they're small in number, that have been using some video telemedicine technology for a number of years, based on a service that allows extreme compression of that video. So it's very choppy. It's not the best quality. But say you're out in Yellowstone somewhere, and the climber, I forget his name right now, but they got stuck between the rocks and had to cut off his own arm. If a paramedic crew was able to respond to him and get on the phone or get on the device with a hospital in real time, and the doctor could visualize, you think FaceTime or think that kind of thing.
Think of the Jumpseat, right?
Think
we're
of the
doing
Jumpseat.
it right now.
Exactly what we're doing right now. So it can't be that far away. I don't know the timeline on it, but I know that it'll certainly be coming around soon. And it's just something that I talked before about our increasing capabilities of the paramedics and the EMTs that are out there. I think that's just the next step. Nobody's going to want you to do an appendectomy from the field, but for some of those things that you just need hey doc, what do you think we should do? It's certainly needed.
Wow. Well, it's an ever-changing world, and I tell you what, if I'm listening here right now, and I want to know more about technology in the EMS world, or I want to find out about enhancements to ambulance as a whole, how I can make my truck safer, these standards that are out there. Where can I find information about that, or how do I get a hold of somebody to help me with that?
Well, you can certainly reach out to me. I'll certainly be able to help you with what I know. But there are, if you're on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, I know the publications EMS World, EMS Today. There's several. You can just search for EMS. There's several think tank groups that are out there. Good people to follow on LinkedIn with information, some information sharing stuff that's out there, and we're a large community, but we're much smaller and tight knit than we used to be, because you can see what somebody's doing in Sumter, South Carolina, and Dubuque, Iowa, all in the same swipe of your finger on your smart device. So that's times that we've never been able to do before. So it's pretty cool.
So I'll throw out just a caveat. Thanks for endorsing those publications. They're not sponsors. We're not affiliated with us yet.
Not yet.
So
We'll see what we can do.
But yeah, so I think if I caught you right, hey, give Steve a call. Your information is right down here on the bottom of the screen somewhere. There it is, over there. And S. Rowland at idexcorp.com, as well as check out those publications or the social media sites. There's a lot of good information and experts out there. Steve, thank you so much for joining us in the jump seat today. It's always good to see you. And, next time, John, what do you think? Next time we get him on, he's got to play one of those guitars behind him.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there looking at them in the background thinking.
We thought about surprising him today with it, but next time though, we'll give you
next
time.
Next time, we're going to have you back and you're going to play. You're going to owe us. So just start practicing now.
Our corporate executive vice president has a pretty good collection on his wall as well. And if FDIC ever rolls up again, you have the Battle of the Bands there in the Lucas Oil Center. So maybe we'll have to put something together.
Steve, thank you so much.
Thanks. Appreciate you guys.
Next time.
Yep.
Take care. All right, Dave. That was some good information. That's again an area we have not talked about really much at all yet, and it's doing a disservice to not feature the world of EMS, as it is only becoming more of our job, no doubt, over the past several decades as we build buildings better and have less working fires due to fire protection and education and a assortment of those things. So good stuff.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I just want to make sure everybody knows to join us next week for episode number 17. We're going to be live here in the jump seat, and we're going to talk about technology. We touched on it a little bit today, but we're going to go pretty deep in next week's and technology. And
we're actually going to have
some actual.
Yep, we're going to have kind of a user panel. So for those that are tired of hearing us, you won't have to hear much of us next week, because we're going to be letting some folks that firsthand have seen some wins share their stories. So it should be a great chance to hear from them and talk about not just technology and bells and whistles, but application of that and how it has helped them do their jobs more effectively.
Yeah, and I want to give a quick shout out. I know we've got some regular followers, Chief Swigert, who's always watching us, and Sean in Columbus, who I know is watching today as well. Thank you for tuning into the jump seat. We love having you guys catch us. But I want to encourage you guys to comment. We love to see the comments and get your feedback. So you can shoot us some messages personally if you want to look up myself on Facebook or John, as well as give us some comments. We want to know what you want to see, what you want to hear about, and we look forward to your feedback. So hopefully we'll see you again next week. You can join us again here at 3:00 to learn more about technology and how it has improved some users, fire departments themselves. And thanks for joining us. Hope to see you next week.
See you next week. Thanks, everybody.